morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ and here is your detailed forecast update for February 4th, 2025. A lot to get through today. We're going to be recapping on the flooding situation around Townsville and into North Queensland. We're also going to be talking about the rainfall forecast there over the coming couple of days with more falls likely. We'll touch on far north Queensland as well and what's expected up there, the Northern Territory and Western Australia, expecting some tropical rain as well. Heat waves over in Western Australia and also a powerful tropical cyclone in the making offshore from WA. So all of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing, but let's get stuck straight into things this morning over in North Queensland. Around the Townsville area once again, where there are still some showers that have been moving through over the course of the last 24 hours. The rain has of course been much lighter, especially over the last 12 hours. I didn't really get much rainfall last night, only a couple of drops here and there, but there have been some heavy falls around, especially down towards Mackay, where totals since in the last 24 hours have been up to about 170 millimetres down there, so the Proserpine River back on the increase in terms of the water levels. And unfortunately for North Queensland and also for far north Queensland, there is more rainfall on the way. It's not going to be as heavy and it's going to be a lot patchier, which unfortunately does make it a little bit harder to predict, but we're still looking at some moderate to heavy falls expected into the middle parts and into the later parts of this week, and we'll get to that in just a few moments. But I would just like to touch on the flooding situation up around far north Queensland right now. So we still have that major flooding, of course, of the Herbert River. The water levels there are unlikely to drop below the major flooding alerts around Halifax and around Trebone until probably late Wednesday afternoon or early Thursday morning, depending on what rainfall comes through there. So rainfall, the water levels won't drop there much further. The Bhole River is beginning to drop quite rapidly now. They're still at the minor flooding alert, but minor flooding is expected to ease off there later on this afternoon. The Alpen Weir is expected to drop as well into tomorrow and into Thursday as well, but still it is quite high. It's at the moderate flooding alert, and moderate flooding is still continuing throughout much of Townsville. So certainly some significant water levels around there, and they're unlikely to drop throughout the remainder of today. Or whilst they will drop, they're not going to drop by a significant amount. The Haughton River flowing at the major flooding alert around Gira, and that's expected to continue to rise as well, but it won't be rising for much longer, and the rising has really slowed off now around Giru, and I reckon the river levels there will begin to drop pretty shortly. The Burdekin River is continuing to rise and rise quite rapidly as well. Minor flooding now heading out into air, and I reckon they're going to peak out at moderate to potentially major riverine flooding there. Now, it does take a lot to flood the Burdekin River, and I don't expect major flooding to be too much of a problem around the Burdekin River and in its catchment. However, I still expect moderate to major riverine flooding between air right out towards Ravenswood here. Charters Towers water levels now beginning to drop off a little bit, which is good news indeed. The Proserpine River, not expecting flooding there. It's below the flood level right now, and then down towards Mackay, the Pioneer River is flowing quite hard, and as you can see, there is some rainfall heading there throughout the course of this morning, and you can see on the radar loop the rainfall has actually been pretty steady and pretty heavy as well at times around Mackay, so the chance of flooding in the Pioneer River is now starting to increase, and they have had good enough rainfall to cause moderate riverine flooding out towards Gargett and Marion, and I reckon the rainfall there over the coming couple of hours will continue to add to the minor to moderate flooding problem around the Mackay town centre. But yeah, they've had some good falls, and they're expected to continue to get these good falls as well. It looks like Mackay is actually kind of in for a bit of a wet day here. I don't see this rainfall dropping off anytime soon. Whilst it will get lighter as the day goes on and a bit patchier as the day goes on, I reckon Mackay will continue to receive showers and storms throughout the remainder of today. Now, taking a look at the radar imagery and the satellite imagery, it gives you a pretty good understanding of what's currently going on right now across North Queensland, especially in towards the far north as well. There are some showers and some good storms offshore from the far north Queensland coastline around Cairns, and those have delivered rainfall accumulations up to 250 millimetres overnight around Belend and Kerr and along the far north Queensland coastline. Inland, there's still some good showers and storms materialised between Georgetown and Charters Towers. You can see moderate falls currently extending out there, but again, they aren't too heavy and they're not causing too much in the way of significant rainfall, but they are slow moving enough as to where they will cause problems for rainfall and once it gets itself into the Burdekin catchment, because again, it's not going to take too much rainfall to cause major flooding once again to pipe up in both the Haughton and the Burdekin rivers, just considering how much rainfall those catchments have already had. It's been a very long introduction, so let's jump straight into the forecast right now. The Eastern WF is a little bit different to the GFS and the Axis forecast model, and whilst I do like the Eastern WF's forecast right now, which I'll explain in just a few moments, I'm more inclined to use the Axis and the GFS solution here, just considering that both those forecast models are saying pretty much the same thing, and as a forecaster we do look for model congruency and similarities between forecast models in order to make an accurate forecast. So using the Axis, but I would like to say take this with a very heavy pinch of salt. The Axis is calling for a lot of rainfall, and I don't really see it all materialising as well across North Queensland, especially far north Queensland, and you can see that there are still a couple of discrepancies between the forecast models. I mean, it is still calling for that heavy rainfall off Hinchbrook Island right now, whereas as you can see on the radar imagery, there's really only moderate to or light to moderate falls down there. So the Axis can get it wrong sometimes, and it has, I do believe, it in a few instances, but again, this is for the forecast model that we're going to be using. So you can still see heavy showers still streaming into the Queensland coastline from the northeast. They're most likely going to be concentrated further north, just south of Cairns, down through Innisfail, Tully, and then down towards Cardwell. This forecast model has it down to about Townsville Townsville, but like I said, we're still expecting those moderate heavy showers streaming ashore along the coastline throughout the remaining couple of days, and we've still got some significant falls on the forecast, and as a potential for the Townsville area as well. You can see the moderate heavy falls hanging around the Townsville area. I do believe Wednesday afternoon and Wednesday evening we're going to see another resurgence in the rainfall, albeit just for a couple of hours, but between the other forecast models, the GFS and the Axis G3, they're both calling for resurgences in rainfall that's going to occur off the north and the far north Queensland coastline, somewhere between Bhole, Kerr and Fishery Falls, down through Ingham, Cardwell, Lucinda, and then down to about Townsville. In this general pocket here, I'm expecting moderate heavy falls to materialise late Wednesday afternoon and into early Thursday morning, and that will give way to probably another 100 to 150 millimetres along the coastline, with isolated spot falls into mountainous areas up to about 250 millimetres. Again, not rainfall that they need, that's for sure, but there is still going to be some good falls on the forecast Wednesday night into early Thursday morning, and it's reciprocated between the forecast models as well, so it is a good chance of happening. Beyond about Thursday, the Axis forecast does break down a little bit. It's still calling for moderate heavy rainfall on Thursday and into early Friday morning, and I do feel like that's going to happen, especially around the Cardwell area. I'm expecting another resurgence of rainfall, like I said, starting Wednesday night and continuing through Wednesday night through Thursday and into early Friday morning. But after about then, you can see the Axis is just calling for a bit too much rainfall, I reckon. Whilst other forecast models are suggesting a bit of a trough line to set itself up across the North Queensland coastline into the Cape York Peninsula, extending as far inland as about Mount Isa and well out to sea as well, just in this general area here, if you can trace out the cursor. Whilst there is suggestions for a bit of a trough line, a low-pressure trough expected to develop there Thursday and Friday, which will give way to just another solid band of rainfall sitting across this part of far north Queensland. It is a brand new addition to the forecast, and as such, I would like to say take it with a very heavy pinch of salt this morning. It is not looking overly likely at this time that does set itself up, and I would just like to say we're going to have to wait until tomorrow morning's forecast update to see what's happening there. In any case, if this trough line does set itself up, we will be looking at some significant rainfall accumulations, but by significant, it's going to be more sort of that normal significant rainfall accumulations, where it's going to be a couple of days of rainfall that might amount to 350 or 400 millimetres at an absolute worst case scenario. Now, whilst these river levels are continuing to drop, 400 millimetres will hamper those recovery efforts, that's for sure, especially into this weekend, and will certainly destroy access to roads that might have been restored throughout the next couple of days. So 300 or 400 millimetres will certainly be a significant problem, but for the most part, locations will be picking up between 100 and 250 millimetres, and that will cause a negligible increase to the floodwaters if it happens over about 3 or 4 days. So we're going to hope for more sort of moderate rainfall over the course of this, over the course of the remainder of this week and then into this coming weekend. At any case, I would still expect the drop in the river levels to be halted temporarily, especially later on this weekend around the Herbert River and then into rivers up around the Tully and the Johnston. And the good news is that this rainfall isn't going to get itself right over the top of Townsville for the most part, and certainly no location south of it. So the Haughton River, the Ross River and the Burdekin River all look to be safe from additions to the rainfall there, and especially considering the rainfall there is the freshest and the floodwaters are not beginning to recede just yet, that would kind of be a worst case scenario if the rainfall got itself situated around the Townsville area. It's more sort of North Queensland to far North Queensland. Not only are they built to handle a little bit more rainfall up there, but especially considering this rainfall is going to actually slide a little bit further north of Cardwell, which was kind of a bit of a dry spot in the last week or so. So up around the Tully and the Innisfail area, if the rain gets itself situated over there, they will be fine more or less if they get 400 millimetres over the course of about 3 or 4 days. It will be a problem if rainfall was heavy around the Herbert River catchment, especially upstream around sort of Ravenshoe and Mount Garnett. That does raise a few concerns for me right now, considering the fact that there is actually rainfall expected up towards there and a significant amount of it that is possible, and all of that will flow down into the Herbert River and just add to the flooding problem that they're having down there as well. And whilst we're talking about this rainfall, might as well get an idea of how much is expected here. So this is the Eastern Weather solution, which I don't really like, but you can see between the GFS and the Axis G3, they're calling for pretty much the exact same thing between other forecast models. So we'll use the Axis G3, but again, I would just like to say take it with a heavy pinch of salt, and I'll explain these rainfall accumulations town by town. So like I said, the bulk of it coming through between Cairns. Up to Cairns, about 250 millimetres expected over the next 5 days, right out towards Saturday. I reckon rainfall accumulations around Innisfail and Tully will be up to about 400 millimetres, with the bulk of that coming through on Thursday and Friday there. Some significant falls also possible around Bhole and Kerr and Fishery Falls, up to about 500 millimetres possible there. Cardwell maybe about 250 to 300 millimetres. Again, it is a little bit hard to tell at this time. Hinchbrook Island could see up to about 350 millimetres there. And then south of Cardwell, it's really hard to say. If the rainfall gets itself jammed into the Ingham and the Lucinda area, again, like the Axis G3 forecast model is calling for right now, you can see forecasts are pushing 800 millimetres again, on top of the 2,000 millimetres of rainfall that these places have already received in 2025. I mean, you'd be looking at the annual average having fallen by early February here. So really significant falls if this was to materialise. And unfortunately, unfortunately, between other forecast models, the GFS is actually calling for semi-similar rainfall accumulations here up to about 600 millimeters, and even the ECMWF calling for some significant accumulations here up to about 350 millimeters. So right now, the scope of possibilities for Ingham is anywhere between 200 to about 600 millimeters, Lucinda about 200 to 700 millimeters, so a huge array of uncertainty here. And if they did actually get up above 500 millimeters, it would be over once again in terms of the flooding situation. It'd be a disaster if they got more than that. But at this point, considering it is a brand new addition to the forecast, we haven't seen this in previous forecasts, especially in the last couple of days. So I would just like to say, take this forecast with a very heavy pinch of salt. Things can and they're most likely to change as well. But at this time, it isn't looking great for far north Queensland, around the Ingham and the Lucinda and the Halifax area, unfortunately. So I would just like to say that, again, I'm really hoping that I'm going to be wrong here, and you can probably hear in my voice, I'm very uncertain with this weather event here. I'll be releasing more updates on it, and I'll be able to tell you exactly what is expected by early tomorrow morning. But at this time, I reckon it's a 50-50 chance of it being another disaster unfolding up here in far north Queensland come this weekend, or at least by Friday, Saturday, and into towards Sunday as well. Down towards Townsville, I mean, the forecast here seems really bullish. Townsville seeing up to another 500 millimeters as per the Axis forecast here. I think they're going to get a much more reasonable, closer to about 300 millimeters of rainfall. In fact, it probably will be a little bit lighter than that. And considering it's going to be spread over the course of 5 days, 50 millimeters a day, I mean, that's not going to cause too much in the way of problems, especially because the rainfall over the next couple of days is going to be lighter. So whilst 300 millimeters is possible for Townsville, and there will be some heavy falls here and there on Thursday, Friday, and in towards Saturday morning, but I don't expect flooding to be a major problem around the Townsville area. Whilst it will just add to the flooding problem that they've had, I think it's more going to be a case of just slowing the receding pattern that these waters are going to take, as opposed to just adding to the flooding emergency there, which is good news. It just means that those rivers will take a little bit longer to clear up, which is just much better than more places getting inundated over and over again. As a result of excessive rainfall. Down into the Burdekin catchment as well, I mean, the Burdekin does drain right up here as well around Charters Towers and Ravenswood, and they're expecting some decent falls, especially over the coming couple of days through today, Wednesday and into Thursday. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Burdekin River again approached major flooding level or held major flooding level at some of its locations throughout Wednesday and Thursday, from a resulting of this rainfall here up to about 150 millimeters for Charters expected and about 200 millimeters for Ravenswood possible over the next couple of days, and again reciprocated between the other forecast models. Heading down the coastline, a bit of a wild card around the Whitsundays, Proserpine and Mackay. The major forecast models, ECMWF, calling for some significant falls down there over the coming couple of days, especially Wednesday and Thursday, so I wouldn't be surprised if areas around Proserpine picked up 300 or 350 millimeters of rainfall. But then you can see between the major forecast models, the GFS and the Axis G3 forecast, there's not an awful lot in the way of rainfall there, so I reckon outside of Mackay they'll pick up 150 millimeters, which will flow into the Pioneer River, but again, won't add to the flooding emergency down there. And then Proserpine, I think you're going to be fine there. I'd be surprised if you crack triple figures out and towards this weekend. So interesting stuff, that's for sure. A lot of uncertainties, a lot of discrepancies between the forecast models, and if the ECMWF was calling for something very similar to the GFS and the Axis, I'd have no problem in calling for this weather event right now. And whilst my gut feeling does say that there is some heavy falls on the way again for Ingham, Cardwell and that sort of area just into this pocket of North Queensland between Cairns down towards Townsville, whilst my gut feeling is saying to me, call for this heavy rainfall, it's going to happen, it's very likely at this time, I'm just not 100% certain with the forecast models. There's just too much discrepancies between them, so we'll have to keep a close eye out on the forecast, and again, I'll be able to give you a definitive answer on this forecast by tomorrow morning, so stick around for that. I'll be able to give 2 detailed updates tomorrow on this weather event here. I want to keep everybody in the know, and of course, if you've got questions or comments, leave them in the comment section down below, or hit me up on Messenger. I'd be more than happy to answer your concerns and give you a detailed forecast for your location. I want everybody to remain safe and calm in this weather event and this flooding emergency that's unfolding across North Queensland, but unfortunately, it's tipping towards more rainfall for the already disastrously flood-impacted areas around the Herbert River, which is not good news indeed. Just whilst we're on North Queensland, I would like to touch on the rainfall that's expected between Burketown across Corumba and then up into the Indigenous communities extending up towards Weipa. You can see 10-day rainfall accumulations there looking pretty healthy now as well. And between other forecast models, expecting a boatload of rainfall to get itself jammed up into the southeastern corner of the Gulf of Carpentaria from a weak low pressure system that's actually forecast to develop on the tail end of that low pressure trough that's going to extend across northern Queensland. You can see between the forecast models there is a bit of a weak low pressure system that funnels in that rainfall through Thursday, Friday, Saturday Saturday and then in towards Sunday, and that rainfall actually hangs around until early next week, and in fact in towards late next week as well. So certainly the chance of maybe a weak cyclone developing here or there, and certainly the chance of a couple of low pressure systems meandering around the Gulf of Carpentaria. But yeah, some heavy falls on the Carpentaria coastline extending through population centres such as Gregory, Burkton, Croydon, even across towards Georgetown as well, and then some of the indigenous communities between Karumba up towards Weipa and Orican, that we're expecting some significant falls there, up to 1,000 millimetres of rainfall. It is about that time of the year when the rainfall really piles on for this part of the Carpentaria coastline as well. We normally see it once every year around sort of February, and yeah, it is typical. They're built to handle this type of stuff, but again, expect some minor to moderate flooding in this part of Queensland over the coming couple of days from rainfall that's expected to fall from about Friday onwards, and again last there for about a week. That is enough talk on North Queensland, the rainfall situation, though. I would just like to briefly update you guys on southeast Queensland, south central Queensland into New South Wales as well. And whilst there's nothing in the way of significant thunderstorms expected over the next couple of days, we're seeing showers across the southeast of Queensland throughout the remainder of today, and a couple of showers and storms into tomorrow afternoon across the New South Wales central coastline as well. We could actually be seeing a couple of severe thunderstorms around the Canberra and Captain's Flat area, and also the chance of some severe thunderstorms up around Dubbo, Orange, and then north towards Moree, Walgett, and Lightning Ridge. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. A couple of showers and storms also expected into the northern rivers and the northeastern corner of New South Wales. A few storms extending across the border into towards southeast Queensland on Thursday, and then a bit of a thunderstorm outbreak expected Friday afternoon and evening across parts of south central and southeastern New South Wales, and then Saturday night we're expecting a good thunderstorm outbreak into the northern rivers and the northeastern corner of New South Wales, and then a nice thunderstorm outbreak as well into the southeast of Queensland possible along the border Saturday afternoon and evening. A couple of severe thunderstorms here and there around Stanthorpe, and then storms continuing through Sunday and into towards Monday as well. But again, nothing standing out to me over the next 14 days in terms of the chance of a massive severe thunderstorm outbreak across parts of southeast Queensland and New South Wales. It is peak thunderstorm season, of course, so it is a bit unusual that we're not seeing too much in the way of thunderstorms there. The long-range forecast, March to May, does suggest some good thunderstorms, especially into the back end of the wet season into towards April, so that's kind of what the long range is pointing out right now. So don't be fooled, the storm season is certainly not over at this time, but we will have to wait and see on what is expected across the southeast of Queensland and the northeast of New South Wales in terms of when we're looking more long range. But at this time, nothing too much in the way of thunderstorms expected over the next week, and nothing really expected over the next month either. Nothing happening in South Australia, Victoria or Tasmania, so we'll just skip right through there and in towards Western Australia as well. There's not an awful lot going on there either. In terms of the temperature, though, it is all happening across parts of the Pilbara region and into the Gascoyne. It got very warm yesterday up at Gascoyne Junction, peak temperatures of, I believe it was 48 degrees yesterday afternoon and evening. I'm seeing if the temperature analysis here will load in, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But yeah, very, very warm indeed across parts of the Pilbara region. Murchison, again, yesterday was very warm indeed, but yeah, again, it doesn't look like these temperature observations want to load in here, which is quite unfortunate. I was looking forward to showing those in these videos, but yeah, it is going to get quite warm again this afternoon and evening around Gascoyne Junction, a top of 48 degrees expected, down towards Murchison as well, a top of 46 there. Temperatures again rising on Wednesday, temperatures up towards 46 for Murchison, 45 for Morawai, and then down towards 45 for Mora, 42 for Gin Gin, and a top of 41 degrees expected into the Perth metro area. So it is going to get very warm again into the middle parts of this week, into tomorrow afternoon and evening, before those temperatures get pushed further inland by this low pressure system, and those hot temperatures extend out towards the goldfields, where mid-40s are expected on Thursday and Friday for parts of the goldfields. It is going to get quite warm. It is typical for this time of the year, of course, it being summer. We're expecting this type of stuff here, but it is actually quite warm in comparison to what it normally is across Western Australia. So extreme heat warnings likely to be raised across interior parts of WA. Interesting stuff, that's for sure. And as it gets hot, of course, that means there's a tropical cyclone offshore. I mean, that's just how it happens here. And we have two tropical cyclones, actually. Tropical cyclone Vince over here, which has developed really nicely overnight and is now up to Category 3 strength severe tropical cyclone status. It's actually a quite strong system, that's for sure. Very far away from Western Australia, though. I mean, absolutely no impact in terms of rainfall or even wind speeds expected across Western Australia. And then, of course, the much more powerful and much more impressive storm is Tropical Cyclone Tiffany. And whilst I say powerful, it's obviously weaker than Vince right now, but it is expected to end up being more powerful than Tropical Cyclone Vince, with a peak of Category 4 status expected sometime tomorrow into Thursday morning. So let's take a look at how these systems have developed nicely. I mean, Tropical Cyclone Vince has been the show stealer right now. It's a small system, a compact system, and it's really doing quite well, making the most of some pretty good sea temperatures right now, and a really good environment that it's found itself in, and as such, it has been able to rapidly intensify overnight. So that is very good for the system indeed. Tropical Cyclone Tiffany still taking her time, as you can see see on the satellite loop as if it decides to load in here, but it is still a little bit of a convective mess at this time. I think it's really taken the long way in terms of how it wants to develop at this time, but yeah, it certainly, once it wraps itself up a proper eye and a proper eye wall, it is going to become a proper tropical cyclone, and quite a strong one indeed, and I do feel like that's going to happen sometime later today. But in terms of wind speeds, you can see Vince out here, pretty much dramatically underestimated, to be honest. It's definitely a Category 3 strength severe tropical cyclone. It's expected to continue intensifying as well throughout the remainder of today and into early Wednesday morning before it holds off a little bit, and then through Thursday and into Friday it begins its weakening phase there as it heads deeper and deeper into the Indian Ocean. Tiffany, however, expected to get a lot stronger by the looks of things. It's expected to rapidly intensify throughout the remainder of today, get itself up to about 3 or 4 on the Australian cyclone scale. That's the category, of course, by late Wednesday afternoon, and then we're expecting this to reach its peak intensity sometime Thursday morning or Thursday afternoon as a Category 4 strength severe tropical cyclone before heading deeper and deeper out into the Indian Ocean, and then terminal weakening by the looks of things kicks into play beyond about Monday or Tuesday. It's expected to actually have a bit of a second phase of intensification through Saturday and Sunday, but it will find itself over areas that Tropical Cyclone Vince has already tracked across, so I reckon the sea temperatures there will be a lot cooler, especially considering ocean heat content, which is how deep the warm temperatures run in the ocean out there. It will take a pretty big hit from Vince, considering you can see Tiffany tracks over exactly where Vince is pretty much right now, so I reckon Tiffany will actually begin terminal weakening on Friday, as opposed to where the forecast models are saying it'll take some terminal weakening beyond about Monday or Tuesday next week. Regardless, though, they're going to be two impressive systems. They're both expected to wind up being quite strong, and certainly some significant storms, that's for sure, and it's very lucky that they're not heading for Western Australia, that's for sure, considering they would both be severe tropical cyclone landfalls and as such causing some pretty significant damage up there. But yeah, certainly some good news, that's for sure, that they're not going for Western Australia. Looking deeper out towards the long range, there have been some suggestions of tropical activity or tropical cyclone activity offshore from the Kimberley or the Pilbara coastline much later off on into the forecast period. You can see here on the GFS forecast model sometime around Thursday or Friday, the 13th, 14th and 15th of February, we are seeing maybe a rumble or two of activity there, and really it is actually reciprocated between the other forecast models with the low pressure system situated just offshore, so it might be a wet end to next week across parts of the Pilbara coastline, and we might also see a tropical cyclone develop out of it, but I think it might just be a case of the GFS going a little bit too far long range at this time, and kind of just spinning up anything that it feels like it has to. But yeah, anyways, that basically does it for today's forecast update. I would just like to leave a bit of a closing message. If you haven't already, then please consider subscribing if you're from North Queensland as well. The weather event is not over up there. The flooding emergency is not over there. And I do really appreciate all the support that everyone has shown over the last couple of days. I've also had plenty of requests of people wishing to donate me money. I don't want to take donations. I want to keep this as a free weather service for everyone. But if you do feel inclined to donate, you can always become a channel sponsor. It's $5 a month. And it does give me access to all of this fancy software. So again, thank you so much to all of the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now, and again, I could not run the show without them, and their support is much appreciated. But yeah, I don't encourage donations, just considering I want to keep this a free channel for everyone. I want everyone to have access to the highest quality, best free weather updates, and I have made the conscious effort to nerf the quality of the videos as well, so that people in low reception areas can access them too. I just want to make this the most accessible weather content and the easiest to digest weather content that Australia has to offer, and I do hope that everyone is seeing that as well. I'm also going on a holiday as well down south from Perth from, I believe it's the 9th, yeah, the 9th out to the 15th of February as well, so there won't be any coverage on there. I will still be able to give Facebook updates as well, so if you haven't already, then check out the Facebook page. There'll be a link in the channel description, also a link in the pinned comment as well. I'd be very appreciative there. We're trying to grow that as well, and again, the support on that has been unbelievable too. If you've got any videos or photos of the floodwaters as well, send that through to me, of course, over on Facebook. But yeah, that has been all from me today, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.